Well, my involvement didn't start on Willy Street. My involvement started at the Nitty Gritty when I was getting divorced, and I met a friend at the Nitty Gritty, and there was a man tending bar there who had the best butt I had ever seen. Oh my God, you could put your hand in the dips of his butt. It was art. it was tactile art. And I met him that day, and the next day I went home with him, and his name was John Tuschen. That was the beginning of the story. The first thing we talked about was poetry and Paris, because he had just gotten home from Paris. What he was hoping that he would bring to Madison the sense that the city was art, that its being was that culture and art were what made a city what it was and who it was and the people of it. His dream was to integrate all of the kinds of visions that people had, whether they were artists or not. And Tuschen saw that as an integrated whole. And that poetry, in a sense, was the cement that held these other bricks of thought together. That poetry is what bridged the gap between what you want and what you get. And that it was the set of words that identified how you'd get there. So that you wouldn't end up building a building just with bricks, but you'd end up building an edifice that invited people to come in and where they wanted to be. And that those words made you understand it, helped you understand it, and helped the people who were growing and developing and thinking and planning and whatever, that poetry would make the visions real, so that people who were not visual artists could speak, and someone like Tuschen could translate that into a poem that a visual artist could hear and go, oh, I know what that means. And they could build it or make it or do it or whatever. That was our first conversation. I had lived in a commune in Ohio, which was not anything like 853. 853 is only a commune of sorts. There were a lot of people, each in their individual rooms, who happened to share a bathroom and a kitchen, but they weren't integrated emotionally necessarily. They weren't integrated in goals. They weren't integrated in vision. They all needed a space where their selfness could be at rest and their vision could be practiced. Somehow they could develop what it was that they were seeing in their head. They were all artists of some sort, and they all wanted a place cheap enough to live while they either learned their craft better or developed thought that they had, like Patty Duran making that room in plaster and mirrors. That was her work of art, and nobody knew what it meant to her, and what it meant was not relevant, because what Danny Yopak would say is that, art's a window washer when he comes on Thursdays. But what it was to Patty and what it was to me and what it was to Dan and what it was to anybody else who saw it was simply what it was. And each of us took away our own thought. Now, watching her make that room, I was going, oh my God, why are you putting shards of glass on the wall? Because somebody will get hurt. Obviously, I was not in her same artistic space. But the finished product was one of the most unimaginable until it was completed. So somebody's vision that nobody else had was suddenly realized in this place. I was not a particular artist at that point. I wrote poetry, but I'd never written poetry for a purpose. I'd never thought of my poetry as an art form. I always just thought of it being something that I had to do. I had words that had to come out. Well, that's what a poet is. It wasn't long after that I moved in also, and I had my room, and it was connected to Tuschen's room.